hit 56 billion cedis as losses surged to 10 billion cedis. That is the latest revelation captured in the ECG's own audited financial statement as calls intensify for some private participation in the work of the power distributor.
We want to take a look at that again, because if we don't fix the electricity company of Ghana, we will continue to have a major problem with our whole power value chain. And so going ahead with privatizing the last point of distribution of electricity to bring in private sector efficiency is something that we want to take up again.
We have all the details plus the new audit report casting damning verdict on management of ECG as the audit says the company underdeclared revenue to the cash waterfall mechanism by more than 1 billion cedis. Well, tonight ECG is drowning in debt according to the latest audited financial statement of the State Electricity Distribution Company. The audit concluded that ECG's debt is currently standing at 56 billion Ghana cedis, whilst its losses are surged to 10 billion cedis. Another audit conducted into 8 operations in the last quarter of 2024 pointed to under declaration of revenue to the cash waterfall mechanism by more than 1 billion cedis. The audit conducted by PricewaterhouseCoopers also revealed that ECG operates more than 80 bank accounts despite an IMF conditionality that it should operate a single account. All this coming on the back of recent conversation about introducing private participation in the operations of the fully owned state company. The discussion has been raging. Is it time or is it not? We have the numbers to share with you shortly. But first, listen to President John Dramani Mahama when he met a delegation from the World Bank.
The Achilles heel of Ghana's financial and economic stability is and blow apart everything that we have achieved.
Absolutely.
In the last few years. And so how we change the systems in the energy sector to make sure that we pay down the debt and make it more efficient than it is currently. I was vice president at the time. My president, Professor Atta Mills, signed the MCC. Actually, I signed it, but he initiated the discussions. And when he was ready to sign, I was the one who signed it. And it was meant to improve and make Ghana the most efficient producer of electricity in Africa and become a major hub for electricity exports. Unfortunately, democracy has its dividends, but it also sometimes can be a curse. We left government and a new government took over and took over the Millennium Challenge Compact, mixed up the last segment of it, which was providing efficiency in distribution, billing, metering, and all that. And of course, PDS is history now. But we want to take a look at that again, because if we don't fix the electricity company of Ghana, we will continue to have a major problem with our whole power value chain. And so going ahead with privatizing the last point of distribution of electricity to bring in private sector efficiency is something that we want to take up again.
This is Top Story, always brought to you by Telecel, connecting energies and holding set-aside spray and coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Now, my colleague Isaac Kofi has been pouring through the audit reports and joins me in studio with some more detail. Kofi, let's start from ECG's own audited financial statement. Now, the financial position of ECG is 56 billion debt stock. How did we get here?
In fact, ECG's debt stock has been above 30 billion Ghana cedis since 2022. But we understand from the report that this debt stock reached 56 billion Ghana cedis in 2023. If you do the math, it means that ECG's debt stock between 2022 and 2023 went up by more than 50%, Kojo. Now, if you look at the company's profitability position, they've been making losses above 8 billion Ghana cedis since 2022. Let me take you through the numbers. 2021 ECG made a loss of 1.4 billion Ghana cedis. 2022 8.06 billion Ghana cedis, and 2023 this is the highest loss that ECG has made since inception. In 2023, made a loss of 10.2 billion Ghana cedis in 2023.
Interesting. Now, we understand government of Ghana has been making huge transfers to ECG. How much exactly are we looking at?
In fact, the biggest problem facing energy generation in the country has been the shortfalls. And under the cash waterfall mechanism, the government must come in through the Ministry of Finance to do top-up payments. And we understand from the SIGA report that ECG has been enjoying some transfers from government. 2020 was around 6 billion Ghana cedis, and 2023 they are quoting a figure 5.1 billion Ghana cedis. The average has been around 5 billion. So, in fact, 2023, the amount that came in from government as revenue support to ECG was 5.1 billion. But even with that, injection, ECG still went ahead to make loss of more than 10 billion Ghana cedis.
What do we then know in terms of discrepancies in ECG's declaration of its losses and revenue declarations?
In fact, the discrepancies are actually in twofold. So if you look at what the PwC report pointed out, if you look at ECG's revenue generation, the difference between what they reported to the cash waterfall mechanism versus what ECG's itself, their bank statement, bank collections, points out, the difference between the collections about 1.14 billion Ghana cedis. That's what you quoted. Now, if you go to the other part, which talks about the cash waterfall mechanism report that ECG makes in terms of revenue collection or report versus what they actually reported in their revenue sheets, the difference there was around 600 million, Ghana cedis. Another discrepancy we also found was fuel, purchases. I mean, if you look at the fuel supply payments, right, that the ECG reported or the PwC report pointed out, ECG itself told the cash waterfall mechanism that within the period under review, which is the fourth quarter of 2023, they bought fuel worth 136.4 million Ghana cedis. But in the cash waterfall mechanism, they only declared 18.2 million. So that's a huge difference.
Yeah,
I mean, we spoke to Dubik, and he's explaining that this could be forest losses. And in terms of the fuel supply, definitely, because, I mean, this is a continuous process. So maybe the time that, and he put the maybe in code, that the time that they were reporting, they had not captured most of the supply that they had actually brought in.
Quite interesting. But we also do know that PricewaterhouseCoopers conducted an audit into the operations of the company for the last quarter of 2024. Tell us about that report and ECG's revenue faring during that period.
So that's the last quarter of 2023. According to the report, 3.38 billion Ghana cedis was what ECG reported as revenue. But after they were done with the validation report, they realized that this revenue or this figure was higher. It was rather 3.87 billion Ghana cedis. And if you do the math, the difference around 490 million Ghana cedis in just one quarter, Kojo.
And what does it say about ECG's operations under the cash waterfall mechanism then?
Well, according to them, ECG's operation, I mean, definitely they're talking about the cash waterfall mechanism. There's under declaration there. I mean, looking at it from the side of the bank sheet, there's a difference, 600 million Ghana cedis. Comparing it to ECG's, own, that's revenue sheet, 600 million, and ECG's own bank statement shows that the difference around 1.14 billion Ghana cedis.
Now, on revenue collection, I understand the report highlights payment to payment platform vendors. And was there any mention of fuel purchases made by ECG? Earlier, you spoke about that in terms of the discrepancies, but in that particular audit report, does it talk about it?
Yes, it does talk about it. It does talk about how ECG was making a certain payment to some of the private guys they had brought on board for any revenue collection, and it says that, I mean, under the cash waterfall mechanism, these players are not supposed to be enjoying, but ECG goes ahead to pay or make such payments in terms of commission to the players.
Quite interesting there. But we should also state that we understand ECG is operating some 84 bank accounts across 20 different banks during Q4 of 2023. That's quite huge there.
Absolutely.
But we'll try and find out more in terms of what exactly is happening. We've been joined on the line by Justice Kojo Yaoche here. But Kofi, tell us about this the bank account. How many did you know? 80. Why?
I mean, according to the PwC reports, they were able to count 84 bank accounts held across 20 different banks. And we spoke to he says that, look, it will be impossible for ECG to have just one collection account where, they have about 90 districts that they operate in. So it will be difficult for ECG to just have one bank account for collection. But in terms of settlement, that's when the IMF and the new energy sector recovery program suggests that they should have one bank account.
Okay.
And that's what they are working towards. But PRC gave us an update. The recent one shows that currently ECG is having bank accounts somewhere around 61 different bank accounts.
So a reduction.
A reduction there.
All right, thank you very much. Let's bring in Justice Kojo Yaoche. He is policy lead, petroleum and conventional energy at ASEP. Kojo, I'm grateful to you for joining us. But as a watcher of the energy space, what do you make of these revelations by the audit report that we're having about ECG?
Thank you very much, Solomon, for having me. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Clearly, yeah.
Okay. This is the second of audits that have been done by PwC on the power sector in terms of the payments that have been made. And I must say it's been very valuable in exposing the high level of mismanagement and the questionable systems in play at ECG, which is undermining the integrity of the power sector. The entire conversation that we've been having on energy sector debt is actually hinged on some of these things that the report is exposing now. There is a system designed to regulate the distribution of revenue, which is the cash waterfall mechanism, that all revenue that you collect are put into that system for it to, based on a formula that takes account of all the expenses that all the players within the value chain have, takes into account all of that to distribute the revenues to ensure that everybody is getting something from the revenue that has been collected. However, we see the case here where ECG unilaterally decides that I need more of the money. So because I need more of the money, I am going to under-declare how much I have collected so that I can get to keep the money and use for myself and my operation. Then what happens to the IPPs, the power generators? What happens to the distributors and all the players within the value chain? What happens is that the money that is supposed to go to them now keeps piling up as debt that needs to be paid. And we have been making those payments from the budget to the tune of about $1.5 billion annually in recent years, which is not sustainable. So ECG on its own cannot unilaterally say, because I need more money, decide to depart from what all stakeholders have agreed is the way forward. If you have legitimate concerns with how the system is being operated, there are a lot of forums available for you to have these concerns being addressed. Even in 2023, the same cash waterfall, the formula was changed based on to reflect the context of the operations of the sector. So if you have concern about how much you need, that should be reflected. You should channel that and not on your own decide that you are going to keep some of the money. In any case, the things ECG uses the money for, some of them are just ridiculous. I mean, you say that you've been instructed to pay for fuel. So you go and pay for fuel, and which is something that has not been accounted for by the cash waterfall mechanism. It's not your responsibility, but because you have set aside some revenues, you are able to assume that responsibility upon yourself to be able to be paying for the fuel. You have questionable contracts with entities within the space. For example, the revenue collection contract that they have with Haptel, for example. Within 1 quarter alone, you've paid 47 million Ghana cedis as commission, just collection commission to the company.
Do we know exactly how much Haptel brought in to warrant that amount?
We do not know. The report does not say. So that is why we need really not only for the payments and the reconciliation, but a complete forensic audit of ECG's operations. Earlier today, I was hearing the former CEO indicate that it is possible that the bank accounts that are in operation may be more than this, right? So at what point? The last audit indicated that it was about 62 bank accounts. Now we know it's 84. And I am told that PwC has been commissioned to do audit for the 2024 revenue validation. And it's possible that all of these things are going to get worse. So we have to get to a point where we understand that.
But Kojo, in terms of expenditure on fuel, because these plants, some of the plant needed fuel to operate, aren't they right to then go out of their way to say we want to purchase fuel for the plant to produce fuel to produce power for us?
Yeah, but that makes nonsense of the system that has been arranged. That is not their job. They are not supposed to do that. So if you come to tell us that, well, we've been written by somebody why would the person that is writing to you be the one that is making the fuel available? In any case, because they guarantee the supply of the fuel, not ECG.
Okay.
So that shouldn't be your headache.
So with all that you've heard, and we all know that ECG is at the heart of the energy sector. Now, energy sector debt and inefficiencies. But going through the report and reading all that you've heard about ECG, what do you think should happen to the ECG?
Oh, I mean, these revelations, like I mentioned in my earlier submission, indicate how poorly managed the utility is and how we allow people to get away with some of these things without any accountability. So what needs to really happen is, let's look at how ECG is managed. Who is managing ECG? It's government that is managing itself because it's a wholly owned government entity. That is why our position has been always that we need some form of private sector participation. Let's decouple the ownership of ECG away from the management and operation of the entity to ensure that the regulator is able to properly regulate the entity that manages and operates the company. The government can continue to hold it because it's a strategic national asset. But how it is being run, nobody runs power business like that. You only end up racking a lot of debt that poor citizens will have to keep paying for. Because the $1.5 billion that we pay for every year for the under-recovery in the power sector are hospitals forgone, are roads forgone, are potable water forgone. Those are monies that could be used to build multiple UGMCs around the country so that people will stop dying from emergencies.
Okay.
But we are pumping it into an inefficient power system, and that cannot continue to go on.
Okay, could you stay with me? We've been speaking to Samuel Dubik Mahama on the pause earlier, and he's been, explaining much more about what is happening to the ECG. Listen.
Of course, because if ECG, the whole conversation is make those payments and the money will be refunded to you. ECG has written, and hopefully, if it was refunded, it would have reflected. So maybe because it hasn't been refunded, it hasn't reflected. So yes, the Ministry of Finance was supposed to help with the shortfalls. So let's also, I can't speak for the ministry as to whether they did those refunds or they actually helped with the shortfalls.
We're also still trying to understand. I mean, we are comparing your reports, your audited report captured in the SIGA report, 2023 SIGA report. In terms of your liabilities in the SIGA report, we saw 47 billion Ghana cedis. But in your own audited financial report, the figure there is higher, 56 billion Ghana cedis. Also, your losses as captured in the SIGA report was 5.96 billion Ghana cedis. But in your report, your net loss was 10 billion Ghana cedis. Why? Discrepancies all over the place.
Forex. It's the forex loss. It's the cost of production of electricity and also the amount of foreign exchange. Let's not forget, we purchase electricity in dollars, sell it in cedis, and we now have to go get the requisite dollars to purchase on the open market to send back. This discrepancy alone in ECG's 2022 profit and loss, forex loss alone was about 8.5 billion. I think proper scrutiny needs to be given and proper operational conversations need to be had. As I speak to you now, there were some operational audits that I asked for KPMG to do on behalf of the company to be able to establish some of these discrepancies. I'm sure at the right time the company will be able to put it out to be able to make certain statements or certain positions of the company clear to the public.
In fact, there are more discrepancies. For instance, they could not
so
actually...
My brother, before we go on the PwC report, you see, my difficulty with the PwC report is this, the audit report is this. From what I know, I don't know how to explain this. I want to use very simple English. That's why I'm having difficulty here.
Okay.
So let's say initially when they were about to start, they requested for some level of data that I wasn't comfortable or management of ECG was not comfortable to release.
Why?
So for example,
why exactly were you not comfortable releasing
the data they were looking for was for me to give them, let's say, your name, where you live, your meter number, how much you consume on a regular. That is data that under the data protection laws I cannot share. So it will end up leading to ECG releasing technical or vital information as to your residential location. And you know, these big companies, if you give them such data, they can mine the data and even tell you where you as a country you're going. I can't do that. I asked, let's give you aggregate data. Okay? That tells you this was how much we purchased, this was how much we received, and this is where we are going. Now, my biggest question is, let's ask ourselves, this PwC report, what does it seek to clarify? Does it seek to clarify how much money came into the single collection account and how much money went out? Or is it seeking to clarify the processes that lead to ECG receiving revenue? Because those are reports that are already done by the company, that have already been done by the company, and the answers are there. So if I look at this report, I have a big difficulty comparing certain things and say this is like for like. This same audit report came once at some point. It didn't have a management response when I was in office. It was sent back for them to redo it. Let's be honest. I want to be able to speak to a document that I understand properly. And I'm having major difficulty because if one of my biggest difficulties is this. If you say revenue has been underdeclared, you should be able to tell in an audit report where the revenue went. But if you leave it hanging, it was underdeclared, and that's it. What are you seeking? So that would just tell me that probably the whole TOR or the terms of reference was to say how much came in, how much did they give, how much did they keep. So if they kept it, why did they keep it? Everybody needs to know why the company kept it.
But Dubik, it looks as if the PwC and PRC are all singing from the same hymn book that you are under-declaring. So isn't this not something
nobody
new,
has
right?
said, I will say it, and I'll say it here. Under-declaration is not a criminal offense. Let's be clear.
So was ECG intentional?
Listen, let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish. ECG in a month, salaries. Let's look at the salary bill of ECG. Let's look at how much money ECG needs to keep the lights on in your district where you live. with the maintenance that they have to do on the lines. Where is ECG supposed to get that money from? If ECG gives all the money it receives away.
But Dubik, you also will agree that under the cash waterfall mechanism, you are entitled to a component, right?
So if you take that component, if I listen to what you are saying in a stricter sense, then that means I'm waiting for a staff uprising, or I'm waiting for the company to collapse during my watch. Will that be fair? Would it be fair to you where the staff gets up and says they are not being paid, so they are not coming to work?
But nothing also stops you from declaring the actual value to PRC.
But the point is this, right? Nobody said ECG never declared the actual value. But when you declare the value and you tell them what it has been used for, the question is, was it captured? Because I do remember in certain meetings, we telling the PURC, ECG management, exactly what has happened. We have produced we've produced letters to the effect that we had instructions to do A, B, C, and D, but the PURC would not accept it for what it's worth.
Well, Justice Kojo Yauche is still with me. Justice, you heard there the former MD of the company. And let's put it on record that this audit report is for the last quarter of 2023. Having listened to him and looking at all that is happening, should someone be held responsible for this, and who should it be?
We have, first of all, his explanation actually betrays a lack of appreciation of how the system is supposed to operate. The revenues that ECG receives is not for ECG alone to unilaterally decide that this is how the money is supposed to be spent. That understanding has to be, that fundamental understanding has to be there. If you say, well, if I'm not able to pay my staff, how about the generators? If you don't pay the money that is supposed to go to them, and they say they are no longer going to generate power for you, like we saw somewhere last year, where Asogli had to shut down. Which power will you now sell to be bringing in revenue? I think some of these things we should move away from this. Definitely, some people have to be held responsible. The people, we know the people who are managing the company while this was going on. But first of all, we need a deeper forensic audit of the operations of the company to be able to analyze all the problems, especially now that we are considering private sector participation or some privatization efforts for the company. We need to really identify where the liabilities are, because it's possible that we may even be running 200 bank accounts that we don't even know. So as we sit here, we are unable to even tell in real time how much actually ECG collects, because we don't have visibility over the revenue. And I have to state again that the revenue that ECG collects is not for owning itself to naturally decide that I'm going to keep this portion and then report this portion. That should not be allowed to stand.
All right, Justice, I'm grateful to you for joining us here. He is Policy Lead, Petroleum and Conventional Energy of the African Center for Energy Policy, ASEP. This has been Top Story, brought to you always by Telecel, connecting energies and holy insecticide spray and coil. Enjoy a holy sleep. Up next is Newsnight.